Welcome to a meeting of the Boston Region MPO Planning Organization. I'm David Moeller, representative secretary filling here. You are invited to participate in our transportation planning process, regardless of your race, color, national origin, including limited English proficiency, religion, creed, gender, ancestry, ethnicity, disability, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, veteran status or background. You can read the full notice for your rights and protections at www.boston_MPO.org/MPO_DISCRIMINATION. This meeting is accessible to people with disabilities. Zoom products are compliant with exceptions with the following standards: Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1 Level AA standards and revised Section 508 standards. If you require any additional accommodations in order to participate fully in this meeting, or if you have any technical difficulties, please contact Ibu Qureshi at the MPO staff at iquraishi@ctps.org or 857-702-3695 or via the chat box. All participants will join the meeting with muted microphones. Please rename yourself to include your first name, last name, and affiliation. After roll call, board members may mute and unmute themselves. Always remain muted unless actively speaking. To participate in the discussion, please select the raise hand function. Find this by clicking either on the participants button at the bottom of the screen, and a window will pop up with a raise hand button at the bottom, or the reactions button in the toolbar. The chair will then call on participants. Please raise your hand via Zoom if you would like to use an AI note taker during this meeting. If you're on the phone, you can use *9 to raise your hand. First item on the agenda is introductions. Please call the roll.
Certainly. MassDOT Seat 1.
This is David Moeller. I'm here.
MassDOT Seat 2.
Go Dowd, here.
Welcome. MassDOT Highway Division.
MassDOT Highway Division, John Romano here.
Hello, John. MBTA. Morning.
Good morning. Sandy Johnston here representing the MBTA.
Good morning, Sandy. Welcome. Regional Transportation Authority's Metro West Transit Authority.
Jim Nee here.
Welcome, Jim. Next is Massport. Check. I will move on to MAPC.
Good morning, Travis Pollock with MAPC.
Welcome, Travis. MBTA Advisory Board.
Hey, good morning, David. Brian Kane, MBTA Advisory Board. Delighted to be here this morning.
Delighted to have you. Thank you, Brian. Good to see you. Advisory Council.
Good morning, Caitlin Allen Conley for the Advisory Council.
Hello, Caitlin. City of Boston Seat 1.
Morning, City of Boston Seat 1, Lydia Housley.
Hello, Lydia. City of Boston Seat 2.
City of Boston Seat 2, Nayeli Rodriguez.
Hello, Nayeli. At-large City of Everett.
Good morning, Jay Monty, City of Everett, representing Mayor Van Kampen.
Morning, Jay. At-large City of Newton.
Jen Martin, representing Mark Laredo, City of Newton.
Jen. At-large Town of Arlington.
Leonard Diggins, I represent a select board chair, John Hurd, town of Arlington. And now that Brian's here, I'm like really thrilled to be here. Good morning.
Thrilled to have everyone, including you, Len. At-large Town of Brookline.
Rob Guptill, Town of Brookline, representing Commissioner Chute and Chair Bernard Green.
See you again, Rob. Intercore Committee, City of Somerville.
Good morning, Tom Bent, representing the City of Somerville, Mayor Jake Wilson in the Intercore Committee.
Minuteman Advisory Group on Interlocal Coordination, Town of Lexington.
Good morning, Megan Roach, representing Town of Lexington Select Board Chair Jill Hay for the Magic Subregion.
Good morning, Megan. Metro West Regional Collaborative, City of Framingham. I will move to North Shore Task Force, City of Beverly.
Good morning, Erin Schaefer, representing Mayor Cahill, City of Beverly, North Shore Task Force.
Welcome, Erin. North Suburban Planning Council, Town of Burlington.
Good morning. This is John Strauss representing Jim Tigges, Select Board Chairman, Town of Burlington, and the North Suburban Planning Council.
Excellent. Welcome, John. South Shore Coalition Town of Hull. I will move to Southwest Advisory Planning Committee, Town of Rentham.
Rachel Benson here representing Rentham Select Board Chair Gallo and the SWAP subregion.
Hello. Hi, Rachel. Three Rivers Interlocal Council, Town of Norwood.
Steve Olenoff representing the Trick subregion, Town of Norwood.
Welcome, Steve. Hello. And next we have the Federal Highway Administration.
Hey, I'm here. Anthony Johnson, Federal Highway Administration.
I do see Anthony, but I think that calls the roll, and I will return it back to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Next item on the agenda is Chair's Report. I do not have one this week, so we'll go directly to Executive Director's Report. Tegan?
Thank you, David, and welcome everybody. Also glad to be here today. So for the report today, if you go to the next slide, please. I just have an announcement around some LRTP ongoings and a few staffing updates and other new staff to introduce to you all, and then I'll set the context for today's agenda. Next slide, please. So in terms of the long-range plan, we previewed this very lightly on April 6th, but I wanted to remind you all that we're planning a number of presentations and activities to help engage you in the long-range transportation plan development process in the coming months. So first of all, actually, next slide, I think there's some more information on here. Yeah, so targeted for May 21st at the MPO meeting, Erin McGuire, our transportation planner who works on the long-range plan, will guide us through an introduction to the scenario planning work that we anticipate doing for the long-range plan, as well as review the long-range plan goals and related metrics. So flagging this just so that you all can be ready to start those conversations. During that goals and metrics agenda item, we'll be reintroducing what we've established in the last long-range plan around the vision, goals, and objectives. And we'll begin to talk with you and work to investigate performance metrics related to several of those goal areas. So we'll hope that you'll be able to participate in this activity to sort of prioritize the goal areas and objectives that you would like to have us focus on for the exploration of performance metrics. So both of the presentations will have additional opportunities for you all to help guide the development through workshops and board discussions. So we'd like to host an interactive session sometime between June 9th and 18th to get your input on that scenario planning process that I mentioned. And we will hold that workshop outside of a formal board meeting. So soon staff will share a survey to get your availability, as well as your preference for holding this workshop as a fully in-person or a fully remote exercise. Next slide, please. So in terms of staffing updates, first I wanted to highlight for everybody that we do have recruitment. The manager position for the model development team is vacant again, and we are looking to recruit somebody into that position. So please share that with your networks if you're able. And then next slide. I'd like to make another staff introduction. Richard joined our agency on the planning and policy team back on March 23rd, but this was the first opportunity we wanted to take to have him say hello to you all. And the reason is he has the main responsibility for developing and managing the MPO's performance-based planning and programming work. And he's also going to be supporting the long-range plan and the TIP development work. So you'll surely be seeing him more than just his introduction. He brings 8 years of experience, strong quantitative, geospatial, and public policy research skills. And his prior experience includes working on the development of the USAID's Famine Early Warning Systems Network as a senior GIS specialist and at Chemonics International, Washington, D.C. So Richard, would you mind saying hello to folks if you're able to successfully unmute?
Yes, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, nice to get the chance to introduce myself to everyone on the board, and thank you, Tegan, for that introduction. Richard Barad, and yeah, I'll be working on the performance-based planning program metrics. So I'm looking forward to the LRTP discussion in the next meeting that Tegan referenced earlier, and look forward to connecting with more of you soon.
That's great. Thanks, Richard. That'll be an excellent opportunity as well. So say hello to Richard if you have a chance, or join the workshop and see him there as well. All right, thank you. Next slide, please. So today's agenda, we have a number of very important things going on. First, we will have a work scope to look for your approval. This is I believe it's an MBTA funded scope of work around collecting data on parking lot capacity and utilization at MBTA stations. Then we will have an update. It's not an action item, but an update from our MBTA colleagues about the capital investment plan for the MBTA. And they'll present on the tip portion of their CIP. This, as a reminder, the CIP goes beyond federal sources. So they will be focusing on the federal investments that are not 100% bond or state funded. So Mike and Josh will elaborate further on that when they present. And then we will have a quick discussion and vote to release TIP Amendment 4, which has some new programming years for some MBTA projects that are funded by federal grants. And then we will have the two very significant annual action items. One will be to present and then ask that the board vote to release the Transportation Improvement Program, the Capital Investment Plan for a 21-day public review period. And then Olivia Sakosha will be presenting on the UPWP, presenting the draft and asking as well for you all to vote to release that document for a 21-day public review period. The review period for both the TIP and the UPWP this year are going to align, so they will be the same. Then they'll have an action item. Shravanthi will be back to talk to you about the public comments that we received for the Critical Urban Freight Corridor update and request your endorsement of that update. And then lastly, Jia Huang and Aaron McGuire will be presenting on an update on the themes and trends in the public comments that we've been collecting through our engagement activities over the past few months. This is something we've been aiming to do roughly quarterly. Next slide, please. And then our next meeting will be on the 21st of May. That is all I have, Mr. Chair, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Tegan. Any questions for Tegan? Seeing none, next item on the agenda is public comments. Are there any at this time? If so, please raise your hand. Steve Olenoff.
Hi, Steve Olenoff, representing the Trick subregion. I'm speaking today for myself and Tom O'Rourke and the Trick subregion about project number 605857 on the tip for 2029. It's the Route 1 and University Avenue, Everett Street intersection in Norwood. Recently, there was a public hearing from MassDOT going over the design for that. And, this is a very important project for the Trick subregion. We've been waiting a long time for this, and the design so far looks pretty good. A few comments on it, but overall look like the big improvement that we've been waiting for a long time. However, several days after the that hearing, it hit the news that Costco was going to build a giant store right there at the intersection, right on one corner of it, and with 927 parking spaces. So during that hearing, it was obvious that MassDOT was not aware of that project, as just about everyone at the hearing was not aware of that. And so the concern is that the current plan does not take into consideration that large project. So we want to make sure that everyone was aware of this. I'm not talking about the project today. I'm just talking about what effects it will have on that on that design. Do we have to go back to square one now to start that design all over? Given this, there are significant things. The driveway enters right out onto University Ave. It will be a traffic light where it's very close to the intersection itself, and I go through there all the time. I actually live right in the area, and the traffic always backs up. Sometimes it takes three light cycles to get through there, and that's where all the traffic would be coming in and going out of that. So it's a big concern. Is this going to delay the design of the project? How will it affect it time-wise and otherwise? So just wanted to make everyone aware of this.
Thank you, Steve. Jimmy.
Good morning. Thank you, David, for allowing me a moment to include a few brief public remarks. First, I wanted to thank CTPS staff, MassDOT, and members of the board for the work that's gone into advancing the MWRTA heavy-duty maintenance facility project through the TIP. We appreciate the support and the confidence shown in this important regional transportation investment. Often I like to say that the work that the Boston MPO and CTPS staff does is akin to threading a needle. That's not fair. It's more like hurling a piece of thread on a rocket and aiming it to thread a needle on the other side of the earth. And yet each year somehow the CTPS staff completes that nearly impossible task and the region is better for it. So thank you to the entire team. I want to briefly acknowledge what I believe might be a good faith sort of misunderstanding around the project scalability on the MWRTA heavy duty maintenance facility. When we discussed the ability to scale the project to 25 million, the intent was to identify the federal funding need for the current phase, not to suggest that the total project cost was limited to 25 million. Fully realized version of this project remains a bit higher, and the distinction between federal funding and the project cost, I think, is important, as everyone on this board knows. To the extent possible, the MWRTA would appreciate any efforts that CTPS and MassDOT can make working together over the next month during the public comment period to determine whether a correction can be made. I'm not sure if that's even possible. If the matter can't be fully resolved in that time frame, I'd respectfully ask that it remain under consideration during the next TIP development or during any amendment process over the coming year. Again, thank you to the staff and to the board for your continued work on this project and many others like it. It's truly appreciated. And I just I want to make sure that our heartfelt thanks and your consideration is appreciated.
Thank you, Jim. Any other public comments at this time? Seeing none, if anybody has any comments during the meeting, please raise your hand. Oh, I'm sorry, Dennis Giambetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to reinforce what Jim said. I was kind of under the same impression that Jim was at, and that if anything can be done to address that issue would be very helpful. So I'll just kind of ditto what Jim said.
Thank you. Dennis. Thank you. Any other comments at this time? Seeing none, if you have any comments during the meeting, please raise your hand and we will try to call on you. Next item on the agenda is committee chairs reports. Are there any? Sam Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hi, everybody. This is Sam Taylor, MassDOT OTP and UPWP committee chair. So just the UPWP committee met on April 30th, which was last Thursday, where ultimately the committee voted to recommend that the MPO release the draft federal fiscal year 2027 UPWP for a 21-day public comment period. So the MPO board will be taking a vote on releasing that full draft later in this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Any questions for Sam? Seeing none. Brian Kane.
Don't sound so surprised, David.
You always surprise me, Brian.
Then it's working. I'm very happy to report that the Administration and Finance Committee will meet on the 28th of May at 9 a.m. And everyone is invited. We will be discussing state fiscal year 26 budget updates. And who doesn't want to hear that? Thank you, David.
Thank you, Brian. Any questions for Brian? Seeing none. Next item on the agenda is the Community Advisory Council report. Caitlin?
Thank you. I do have one question. Brian, could you tell me what the date was again for that meeting? Was it the 28th or the 26th?
May 26th. Sorry, no, wait.
I thought you said April and then I was confused. So,
well, then it's definitely working. It's Thursday, May 28th at 9 a.m.
Okay, thanks. Awesome. Thank you so much, Chair. I'll keep this short. Our next meeting of the Community Advisory Council will be taking place on May 11th. So after this meeting, so I have no real updates to report today, but I did want to take this opportunity to really underscore that the council strives for continuous improvement to ensure that it's fulfilling our mandate and effectively bringing in broader voices into the conversation and the decision-making progress and process. And I just want to thank the MPO team, Michaela, Sean, Gia, for working with us, Carl, and me to really ensure that we're successful in achieving these goals. So thank you very much. That's it.
Thank you, Caitlin. Any questions for Caitlin? Seeing none. Next item on the agenda is the first of our 3 minutes we're going to approve. March 19th, 2026 minutes. Can I get a motion in a second to approve them? And please state your name for the record when making the motion. Anybody? Tom Bent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I make the motion to approve the meeting minutes of the March 19th, 2026.
Thank you, Tom. Steve Olenoff.
Steve Olenoff, I'll second that.
Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded. Any comments, changes, questions, or suggestions? Seeing and hearing none, please call the roll.
Certainly, and thank you everyone for reviewing the many meeting minutes. Starting with David Moeller.
Yes.
Michael O'Dowd.
Yes.
John Romano.
John Romano, yes.
Sandy Johnston.
Yes.
Jim Nee.
Jim Nee, yes.
Travis Pollock.
Travis Pollock abstained, was not present.
Certainly. Going back to Sarah Lee.
Hi there. I'm going to abstain. I don't see these posted, so I might have missed them. So I will abstain.
Roger, we'll follow up to direct you to the correct link. Brian Kane.
Kane, yes.
Caitlin Allen Connolly.
Caitlin Allen Connolly, yes.
Lydia Hasley.
Lydia Housley, yes.
Nayeli Rodriguez.
Nayeli Rodriguez, yes.
Jay Monty.
Jay Monty, yes.
Jen Martin.
Jen Martin, yes.
Len Diggins.
Diggins, yes.
Rob Guptill.
Rob Guptill, yes.
Tom Bent.
Tom Bent, yes.
Megan Roach.
Megan Roach, yes.
Dennis Giambetti.
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Aaron Schaefer.
Aaron Schaefer, yes.
John Strauss.
John Strauss, yes.
Rachel Benson.
Rachel Benson, yes.
Steve Olenoff.
Steve Olenoff, yes.
Motion carries, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of April 6th. Can I get a motion in a second to approve the minutes, and please state your name for the record when making the motion? Tom Bent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tom Bent making a motion for approval of the April 6, 2026 meeting minutes.
Thank you, Tom. Brian Kane.
Quick question, if I might, Mr. Chairman. Can we do the 6th and the 16th together by chance?
Well, we usually don't, Brian, in case people have questions on one but not the other, or want to take a no vote on one.
Okay, I'll second the motion on the 6th.
Thank you, Brian. And motion has been made and seconded. Are there any comments, changes, questions, or suggestions? Seeing and hearing none, please call the roll.
David Moeller.
Yes.
Michael O'Dowd.
Yes.
John Romano.
Sorry, John Romano, yes.
Sandy Johnston.
Sandy Johnston, yes.
Jim Nee.
Jim Nee, yes.
Sarah Lee.
Sarah Lee, yes.
Travis Pollock.
Travis Pollock abstained, was not present.
Understood. Thank you. Brian Kane.
Kane, yes.
Caitlin Allen Connolly.
Abstain, that was not present.
Lydia Housley.
Lydia Housley, yes.
Nayeli Rodriguez.
Nayeli Rodriguez, yes.
Jay Monty.
Jay Monty, yes.
Jen Martin.
Jen Martin, yes.
Len Diggins.
Diggins, yes.
John Guptill.
Rob Guptill, yes.
Or pardon me, Rob Guptill. Tom Bent.
Tom Bent, yes.
Megan Roach.
Megan Roach, yes.
Dennis Giambetti. Aaron Schaefer,
Aaron Schaefer, yes.
John Strauss,
John Strauss, yes.
Rachel Benson,
Rachel Benson, yes.
Steve Olenoff.
Steve Olenoff, yes.
Anyone on the roll that would like to be acknowledged for the vote? With that, motion carries, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of April 16th. Can I get a motion in a second to approve the minutes, please? Please state your name for the record. Tom Bent.
I'll make it a triple header, Mr. Chair. Motion to approve the meeting minutes of April 16th, 2026.
Thank you, Tom. Steve Olenoff.
Steve Olenoff, I'll second that.
Thank you, Steve. Motion has been made and seconded. Please call the roll. Oh, I'm sorry. Any comments, changes, questions, or suggestions?
I do. Hi, I just wanted the record to reflect that Mark Cunningham attended the meeting on behalf of Massport on April 16th.
Thank you, sir. With that correction, please call the roll.
David Mueller,
Yes.
Michael O'Dowd,
Mike O'Dowd, yes.
John Romano,
John Romano, yes.
Sandy Johnston,
Sandy Johnston, yes.
Jim Nee,
Jim Nee, yes.
Travis Pollock,
Pollock, yes.
Sarah Lee.
Sarah Lee abstained, did not attend. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian Kane,
Kane, yes.
Caitlin Allen Connolly,
Caitlin Ann Colley, yes.
Lydia Housley,
Yes.
Nayeli Rodriguez,
Yes.
Jay Monty,
Jay Monty, yes.
Jen Martin,
Jen Martin, yes.
Len Diggins,
Diggins, yes.
Rob Gupta,
Rob Guptill, yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Bent, yes.
Megan Roach,
Megan Roach, yes.
Dennis Giambetti,
Yes,
Aaron-
yes.
Thank you. Aaron Schaefer,
Aaron Schaefer, yes.
John Strauss,
John Strauss, yes.
Rachel Benson,
Rachel Benson, yes.
and Steve Olenoff.
Steve Olenoff, yes.
Motion carries, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is a work scope for the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority parking lot counts. Bradley Putnam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. My name is Bradley Putnam. I'm a transit planner here to present a work program for MBTA parking lot counts. The schedule is 12 months. The budget is $30,000. This would be paid for using Section 5303 transit planning funds. The purpose of this project is to collect data on parking lot capacity and utilization at municipal and private parking lots near MBTA stations. In 2018, MPO staff produced a park and ride dashboard as part of the MPO's congestion management process. The dashboard included data on parking near MBTA stations, including how many spaces were in each lot and how many cars were parked in those lots at the time when the data were collected. Since 2018, the MBTA has developed automated systems to collect data on parking utilization at lots and garages that it owns. And the MBTA would like comparable recent data on parking capacity and utilization at lots near its stations that are owned by municipalities or private entities. So in this project, MPO staff would count parking capacity and utilization at lots near MBTA stations as directed by MBTA staff. MPO staff would also coordinate with municipalities to request whatever data they might have on parking utilization at municipally owned lots near MBTA stations. Parking data are useful to MBTA staff so that they can better understand how people access their service. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Bradley. Questions for Bradley? Len Diggins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A few questions. You in the background, you mentioned that the dashboard hadn't been updated to 2018, but updating the dashboard is not part of this work plan, right?
Correct.
Okay.
This work just would look to build upon, to continue that sort of work, but it wouldn't be as comprehensive.
Right.
And it's also not happening under the congestion management plan. It's just the
Right.
MBTA would like to see more recent parking data than what's available from that set from 2018.
Right. But would this be added to the dashboard?
So the format of the final product hasn't been determined yet.
Okay.
I think that would be largely at the discretion of the MBTA, since this is an MBTA project, not an MPO project.
Gotcha. I understand. So I did take a look at the dashboard. But will EV charging be stations be part of the count?
We hadn't previously considered that, but we could.
Okay, that'd be great. I think if you could, because I think they're becoming, well, I don't need to go into why, and the same with maybe lots that allow for shared vehicles, and also to Unity. Please take into consideration anything that can be done, to make it easier to update more frequently. To the extent we could also apply what we learned from that process to keeping the update the current dashboard updated more frequently. That's it. Thank you. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, before I go on this, I just have a question, clarification. So Bradley, I think at the beginning of your presentation, you said this was funded by 5303 funding, but both you and Tegan said it was funded by the MBTA. Which is it?
The proposal would be to fund with 5303.
Okay, so it's either MassDOT directed 5303 or MPO directed 5303. It's actually not MBTA funding, correct? Sandy, you got an answer? Oh, good. Sandy, you're shaking your head. Okay.
Yes, I do. That is correct, Mr. Chair. It is MassDOT Directive 5303.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just want to make it clear, so in my own mind, that has no impact on whether we're going to approve it or not. Caitlin?
Apologies for causing the confusion, Mr. Chair.
No worries. Caitlin?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Bradley. I just want to say I think this is a great project and a wonderful addition, in particular as it relates to being able to pursue regional rail and building out faster and more reliable commuter rail service. So I think this is really, really important from that perspective, and also in thinking about transit-oriented development. So really great. In my and I think the council's view. Addition, I would just like to echo what Len said about keeping the dashboard updated. I think it's a really good resource for the public and for those of us who are doing research on this topic as it relates to parking and modernization and advancement of regional rail and commuter rail. Thank you.
Brian Kane.
Thank you, David. Question actually for you, since your question reminded me of something I've been meaning to ask for actually several years now. Can you or someone explain 5303, 5307, what the difference is and sort of how it works and how it flows through the various state agencies? And then I have a specific question about the project.
Sure. So 5307 is urbanized area formula funds that flows directly to regional transit authorities that are eligible for 5303, so non-rurals. They get 5303 funding, 5307 funding directly. Right, and that is what they the MBTA programs 5307 through the tip for capital projects, and so the MPO has input and decision-making authority over the 5307 funding in the sense of that's being the tip, but it's actually MBTA's direct recipient. 5303 comes to not to the entity, not to the MBTA, but to the state and the region. And so that is planning funding, not capital funding.
Okay.
And
thank you.
I have no idea why FTA doesn't make planning funding direct recipients to agencies, but they don't. So there you go.
Very helpful. I've been wondering that for many years, and I never looked it up, and I knew you would know, David. I just wanted to, with respect to the project itself, Bradley, thank you for the presentation. Let me just also encourage you and whoever is doing these counts and the authority itself, count as much as you can of the things that are out there: charging stations, solar panels, coverings, signage, wayfinding, anything that's out there. Let's get a baseline, please, so we know what the municipal and RTA partners are doing with T customers that are parking at lots. The distinction between an MBTA lot and a municipal-owned lot or an RTA-owned lot is really negligible to the end user. And I think it'd be great if we could figure out a baseline and a common standard for which we could sort of judge, account, compare every lot. And I'll just note that there has been an long-going saga now, I guess I'd call it at this point, about a broken charging station at Littleton commuter rail station. I actually don't know if Littleton is in the MPO district or not, but it's been broken for years. It's one of those things. It was a great idea. Someone put a charging station in. It was great. Yay. But there was no money for maintenance. So let's count what we have, what works, what doesn't work, and get as much information as we possibly can so that in the future we can make better decisions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian. Lydia?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. Quick question, just from a curiosity angle. I'm curious if there's any, I know you haven't even kicked this off yet, but if there's any understanding at this point about how you anticipate selecting the stations that you'll focus on for the kind of area around them, and how many stations might be included. And then a second question, or maybe just a comment. The project is focused on vehicle parking around stations as a primary way that folks get to and from stations in order for their kind of first or last mile or multi-mile connection. But also wondering if other types of counts that could help understand how people are getting to stations, possibly using other modes, for example, counting bike parking, is something that would be included. Thanks so much.
Steve Olenoff. Sandy, I'll get to you, but I'm going to let you wrap it up probably. Steve Olenoff.
Yeah, so I just want to point out, you should also note the actual availability of that parking area to the T. For instance, on University Avenue next to the station, there are large parking lots, but they are supposedly policed to keep any commuters from actually parking there, so that people have to use the garage. So that's something that you should probably want to note in this study.
Aaron Schaefer.
Hello, thank you for your time. I just have a quick comment, which is it would be helpful for municipal staff to have a standardized form for the types of data and information questions that the MBTA is looking for as part of the scope of work. If we are using municipal staff to collect data, or we just want to make sure that we know what we're looking for and that we're consistent across all communities when we're taking this data into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Rob Guptill.
Yes, and on the topic of municipal coordination, it seems like, I don't know if you were planning on this, but maybe you were, from what the question that Aaron just asked, when you are reaching out, or hopefully you're reaching out to municipalities, because certainly municipalities are making changes to parking regulations all the time. So in the event that you are reaching out and there's a change that's forthcoming, the municipal staff can coordinate with you on the best time to do those counts.
Thank you. And then, Sandy, before I call on you, I've got just two questions for Bradley. Bradley, first, how near a station does a parking municipal or private lot need to be for you to count it?
Yeah, so we don't have a direct measurement. This would be based in part on the counts that were done under the CMP in 2018. And so first it would be establishing our municipal lots that existed in 2018, do they still exist? And if so, how has it changed? And so some lots could have closed. It's possible maybe another lot has opened in a similar proximity to the station, in which case we would count it. But I think the primary objective would be to update what was there from 8 years ago.
All right, and then I got two more. And only lots, you're not counting on-street parking, right?
Probably not. More just because of quantity than anything else, because there might just be a handful of on-street spots that might be metered or might not. So I think we might get to that, but I think the higher priority would be larger lots that could hold dozens or hundreds of cars.
And then my final question is, this is just a utilization count, right? You're not, or maybe you are. Are you trying to figure out whether the people who are parked in a municipal lot are actually going to the station, or they're just parked in a municipal lot near a station and are doing their municipal business? Like how do you distinguish that if you're trying to do that distinguishing?
Yeah, I don't know that we have any way of knowing the purpose of people parking in a given lot. But I think the idea would be that if people are parking in a municipal lot for whatever reason, whether riding the MBTA or not, then those spaces are occupied and can't be used for further MBTA passengers.
Yeah. So yeah. Okay. Good. So it's capacity and utilization.
Yeah.
Cool. Aaron.
Apologies, I just needed to lower my hand. Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries. All right, Sandy, take us home, man.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, really good, thoughtful discussion. Appreciate all the feedback, and I'd be happy to have folks reach out to me as well as Bradley if you have any questions. I just wanted to kind of respond to a few of the things that have been said. we're really treating this as a pilot for this type of work and relying on MPO staff for their expertise, having done this work in 2018. We would love to work with the MPO and municipalities to get some kind of regular data collection and updates to the dashboard going, and venture eventually into things like on-street parking, and maybe intercept surveys to understand how people are using the lots. To the chair's question, we're not there yet. We want to kind of get this going and make sure that we know that this is something that can work. We do also, I want to remind folks, have another scope that we're working on with MPO staff on transit connection points and wayfinding, which is, I think, going to respond to some of the things, Brian, that you raised about signage, not necessarily in the same locations, but we're kind of slowly developing a set of methodologies for evaluating all of these things in our station areas, that we're excited about. So just thank you again to everybody for all of the thoughtful conversation, and looking forward to working together on this.
Thanks, Dan. You want to go ahead and make the motion to approve since you've got your mic on anyway?
I will do that. I will make the motion to approve the MBTA parking lot count scope as proposed by staff.
Thank you. Lynn Diggins.
Diggins seconds.
Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded. Please call the roll.
Certainly. David Moeller,
Yes.
Michael O'Dowd,
O'Dowd, yes.
John Romano, we'll return Sandy Johnston once again,
Yes.
Jim Nee,
Jim Nee, yes.
Sarah Lee,
Sarah Lee, yes.
Travis Pollock,
Travis, yes.
Brian Kane,
Kane, yes.
Caitlin Allen Connolly,
Caitlin Allen Conley, yes.
Lydia Housley,
Lydia Housley, yes.
Nayeli Rodriguez,
Nayeli Rodriguez, yes.
Jay Monty,
Jay Monty, yes.
Jen Martin,
Jen Martin, yes.
Len Diggins,
Diggins, yes.
Rob Guptill,
Rob Guptill, yes.
Tom Bett,
Tom Bennett, yes.
Megan Roach,
Megan Roach, yes.
Dennis Giambetti,
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Aaron Schaefer,
Aaron Schaefer, yes.
John Strauss,
John Strauss, yes.
Rachel Benson,
Rachel Benson, yes.
Steve Olenoff,
Steve Olenoff, yes.
John Romano,
Sorry, John Romano, yes.
no problem, thank you. And the motion carries, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is an MBTA CIP update part 2. Mike Malia and Josh Klingenstein. Whenever you guys are ready.
All right. Thank you very much. My name is Joshua Klingenstein. I am the director of the CIP development team, working under Mike Malia here at the MBTA, and I am here to present on our proposed amendment to the FFY 26 through 30 tip and our proposed element of the FFY 27 through 31 tip. Next slide, please. And next slide again. So as Tegan mentioned in her executive director's report, this presentation will review all of our federally funded items that are included in our CIP and thus are included in the Boston Region MPO's TIP. It does not include many projects that are funded through non-federal sources, but those are included in our CIP. With that in mind, wanted to throw a few caveats about the numbers that I am about to present. There may be some discrepancies with what you see in the CIP. There are a few reasons for that. One is the timing. We have based these numbers off our proposed CIP. We will be releasing our final CIP in May, which may reflect some minor differences based on project cash flow and schedule changes. And then from a content perspective, our CIP is based on project cash flows, which is based on cash spending timelines. However, the TIP is based on anticipated obligation timelines. There's often a bit of a lag between the two, and so that may also create some minor discrepancies as well. With those caveats out of the way, I will now move into describing the content of our FFY 26 through 30 TIP amendment. This amendment includes $2.4 billion of FTA formula funding. That is our 5307, 5337, and 5339 programs. It also includes $2.0 billion in potential CIG core capacity funding, which we are pursuing through the CIG program, and I will touch on that again later in this presentation. This also includes what we call other federal funding in the amount of $521 million. That includes 32 separate projects that are funded in whole or in part, either by discretionary grants, so those are competitive grants that the MBTA has won, transfers from the MPO or other public entities, congressional earmarks, or RIF financing. This provides critical funding that would not be provided by formula funding alone. After the CIG program, which as you can see is the largest item on this list, our next largest expenditure is our formula funding going to our revenue vehicles program, and then that is followed by signals and systems upgrades, stations and facilities, and bridge and tunnel program. One thing I wanted to mention is that the bus program on this slide is only inclusive of our 5339 federal funding. The amount of 5339 federal funds that we receive is much, much lower than 5307 and 5337 funding. And so I wanted to make clear that we are not only spending $50 million of federal funding on our bus program. There is quite a bit of other federal formula funding as well as discretionary funding that goes to our bus mode wrapped up in those other programs. Next slide, please. So now moving on to the FFY 27 through 31 TIP, you will notice that the amount of funding in this program is quite a bit lower than is included in our FFY 26 through 30 TIP amendment. The reason for this is because we, for planning purposes, we assume that awarded discretionary grants as well as our CIG funding will be obligated in the current fiscal year. Anything that remains unobligated at the end of federal fiscal year 26 will then be amended into the FFY 27 through 31 TIP, and we typically come back to this group in the fall with a request to do that. So that is what is accounting for the discrepancy. I also wanted to note that our RIF financing for our positive train control and automatic train control projects is also assumed in federal fiscal year 26 only. In terms of what we do have programmed in the 27 through 31 timeframe, revenue vehicles continues to top the list. Bridge and tunnel is a bit higher of a share of the total federal program for this stretch of fiscal years. That is due in part to the fact that we are dedicating significant formula funding to the North Station Draw 1 Bridge project, which raises the obligations in the later years of the TIP significantly, and is also due to the fact that we will be winding down some major programs in the signal system upgrade program, particularly on the red and orange line. Next slide, please. So as noted on the previous slide, there is $1.9 billion of total federal formula funding that is included in our 27 through 31 TIP. A significant portion of that federal funding was awarded in previous CIP and TIP development cycles for large-scale projects. One example is the North Station Draw 1 Bridge Replacement Project, which includes $583 million of future federal formula funds. All of that was programmed in previous TIPs. The $962 million number you see on the slide also includes our discretionary grant funding and the local match as well. However, we were able to allocate $151 million of new federal formula funding in this cycle to a number of critical projects. I have highlighted 3 of the largest projects on this slide, but there is formula funding going to a number of other projects as well. The 3 projects highlighted on this side include the procurement of additional locomotives to replace the oldest locomotives in our fleet, $60 million to support construction of multiple bridges that are in our design pipeline, and $24 million to continue our successful bridge inspection and rating program to ensure that all of our bridges are safe and in a state of good repair. Next slide, please. In addition to our formula funding, I just wanted to take a moment to recognize that we continue to pursue discretionary federal funds. We are continuing to pursue funding through the FTA Capital Investment Grants Program for two major programs, excuse me. One is the Blue Hill Avenue Transit Action Plan, which is seeking to implement bus rapid transit on Blue Hill Avenue in the city of Boston. The other is a much larger program, $2.0 billion, as I mentioned before, the Green Line Transformation Core Capacity Program. My colleague Mike Malia went over both of these programs in his previous presentation. A portion of the funding for both those programs has already been appropriated by Congress. However, multiple additional steps will still be needed before the MBTA can actually access these funds and obligate them. We are also continuing to aggressively pursue federal discretionary grants. We've had some wins over the past year, including for the procurement of additional hybrid buses. We also are continuing to submit applications to as many programs as we can. That include recent applications include the USDOT Build Program, the FRA Federal State Partnership Program, and the FTA All Stations Accessibility Grant Program. Next slide, please. So in terms of next steps, the transit elements of the FFY 27 through 31 TIP, including MBTA projects, will be released for public comment as this board votes to do so. After the public comment period, there will then be a vote on approval of the full FFY 27 through 31 TIP, which will include the content that I presented today. Our proposed CIP, for folks' awareness, was released at the end of March. The public comment period went until about mid-April and has since concluded. Right now, we are reviewing all of our public comments, and then we'll be releasing the draft CIP for a vote by our board of directors on May, or that vote is anticipated on the board meeting at May 28th. With that, I am happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Joshua. Questions for Joshua? Seeing none, thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the FFY 26 to 30 TIP Amendment number 4, Ethan Lapointe.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Ethan Lapointe. I'm a senior transportation planner on MPO staff. This first presentation this morning, building off the presentation that Josh just presented, is Amendment 4 to the 2026 to 30 TIP. We can go on to the next slide. Amendment 4 only includes changes to the transit program element of the TIP, specifically the MBTA's portion of that transit program, reflecting changes to MBTA projects and formula funds based on the receipt of federal grants and also the allocation, or rather the mirroring allocation, of changes made to the Regional Target Program. This is consistent with the MBTA's capital investment plan and also some changes that have been previously made by this board on the Regional Target Program under TIP Amendment 3. In terms of specific changes to highlight under this amendment, if we can go to the next slide, there are 4 project-specific changes that are listed here. These being, for the first one, a low-no emission bus award grant for the MBTA for the 40-foot enhanced electric hybrid bus project at $92.7 million. The Mobilized Shield Collision Avoidance Phase 2 project from Safe Streets and Roads for All grant award for $2.8 million approximately. And then 2 projects that are listed in the MPO's Regional Target Program award, being the Downtown Crossing Vertical Transportation Improvements Phase 2 category from MPO Target Funds, which was an Amendment 3 project listed for $15 million, and the Better Bus Project Operational Safety Improvements at Bus Stops project. This is a $3.2 million project that was actually not subject to Amendment 3, but was rather listed in the original program scenario for the federal fiscal years 2026 to 30 TIP this time last year. So this is just reflecting an earlier decision made by this board when the TIP was first adopted, or the active TIP was first adopted. So with that, those are the 4 project-specific changes that are included within this amendment. If we can go on to the next slide. As an amendment, staff are requesting that the board votes to release this Amendment 4 for a 21-day comment period, which will begin tomorrow, Friday, May 8th, and end Friday, May 29th. And I'm happy to answer any questions here.
Questions for Ethan? Ethan, I just have one. that explanation on the last item, that was just like an oversight, a glitch, something happened. We didn't take any action other than what we did back when we approved the 2030 tip or 2026 tip.
Oh, to be clear, yes, this is not any change in action from that original item, and this is more just making sure that it appears on both sides of the tips that the MBTA can access that funding now.
Got it. Thank you, Ethan. Travis, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Question about the Safe Streets and Roads for All project that was on the previous slide. Could I have not been at all the meetings, but can you tell me what the Mobilized Shield Collision Avoidance Phase 2 is? Is that for bus vehicles or other vehicles?
I will have to defer to the MBTA on specifics there.
And Sandy Johnson has his hand up. Sandy, answer the question, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, Travis, it is for buses. I believe it's a camera technology for buses that we have piloted and are now moving to implement on more buses. Apparently it has very good safety results and improves visibility for drivers.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sandy. Any other questions? Seeing none, can I get a motion in a second to release this for a 21-day public comment period? And please state your name for the record when making a motion. Brian Kane.
Brian Kane moves approval, Mr. Chairman.
Tom Bent.
Mr. Chair, I'll second that request.
Thank you. Motion been made and seconded to release this for a 21-day public review process. Please call the roll.
David Muller,
Yes.
Michael O'Dowd,
Michael Dad, yes.
John Romano,
John Romano, yes.
Sandy Johnston,
Yes.
Jim Nee,
Jim Nee, yes.
Sarah Lee,
Sarah Lee, yes.
Travis Pollock,
Travis Pollock, yes.
Brian Kane,
Kane, yes.
Caitlin Allen Connolly,
Caitlin Allen Conley, yes.
Lydia Housley,
Lydia Housley, yes.
Nayeli Rodriguez,
Natalie Rodriguez, yes.
Jay Monty,
Jay Monty, yes.
Jen Martin,
Jen Martin, yes.
Len Diggins,
Diggins, yes.
Rob Guptill,
Rob Guptill, yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Bent, yes.
Megan Roach,
Megan Roach, yes.
Dennis Giambetti, I will return back. Aaron Schaefer,
Aaron Schaefer, yes.
John Strauss,
John Strauss, yes.
Rachel Benson,
Rachel Benson, yes.
Steve Olenoff,
Steve Olenoff, yes.
Dennis Giambetti.
Yes,
With
Betty,
that-
yes, sorry.
No problem. Thank you. With that, that motion carries, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the approval for the release of the draft 2025 to 2027. I'm sorry, 2027 to 31 TIP. Ethan LaPointe.
Hey, thank you. If we can go on to the next slide, please. So this presentation here today is to sort of introduce, or rather reintroduce, the full content of the federal fiscal year's 2027-31 tip in draft form. And at the culmination of this presentation, we will be requesting that this board votes to release the draft tip for a 21-day public review period. In this presentation, I'm going to provide a high-level program overview of the regional target highway program, and then also the statewide highway program, as well as all federally funded surface transportation funds in the Boston region are included in this draft. I'll also have a section that I go into specifically talking about changes that have been made to the TIP document this year versus what some members may be familiar with from prior TIP documents that have been released, and go into some detail as to specific opportunities to engage with the TIP during the comment period, including some in-person events that MPO staff are looking to attend. And again, culminating in that vote to release the draft TIP for comment. We can go on to the next slide, please. So as part of today's presentation, just for members to reference throughout, there's various materials for reference here listed on the MPO meeting calendar, including the draft federal fiscal years 2027 to 31 TIP document, a separate file as well, though it is also embedded in some formats, of the executive summary and translations for the executive summary, and also the TIP appendices for the draft federal fiscal years 27-31 program. Moreover, if we can go on to the next slide, please. I'd also like to note that there will be additional updates that will be going live to the TIP website, I believe tomorrow, which I've listed the link for that website here on the slides, which will not only host these documents going forward, but also on the website now include some new sections for members to more readily access other supporting documentation. This includes the MPO's project programming policies and the TIP project dashboard. When I'm referring to the project programming policies, I'm referring to the 2021 TIP project cost policies and the 2025, both the updated scoring policy that was adopted by the board in the fall and the project readiness guidelines adopted by the MPO board in the early winter. That, if we can also go on to the next slide, please. This then takes us into a section where I'll be talking about document updates, specifically, again, those changes between what you may have seen with the 2026-30 TIP document and the 2027-31 TIP document. If we can go on to the next slide. Generally, what we are looking at here with this TIP document is attempting to still provide the same level of information and detail to members as they navigate it, but make the document a little bit easier to actually access that information. So, for example, the current federal fiscal year's 2026-30 TIP document, just the document itself with the chapters, not including appendices, is 381 pages with 148 additional pages of appendices. And since the adoption of this current TIP, staff have spent the last year coordinating with Mass DOT and also looking towards other Massachusetts MPO TIPs to try to incorporate some more brevity into the document, make it more informative, and help with the overall flow here to, again, make this a more useful resource. So for one example of this, if we can go on to the next slide, one of the items that staff have changed specifically is within Appendix A of the TIP document around project prioritization and scoring. We are adding more information within the document so that it can be a one-stop location for a variety of resources, including a new section for outlining and summarizing the 3 MPO programming policies that I just mentioned earlier, the project cost, rescoring, and readiness guidelines changes. We're also throughout the document working to better leverage and reference to the TIP project dashboard, which is helping us reduce redundancies across the document in the sense that certain sections of the document have sort of been duplicating references to different kinds of MPO work in a manner which can sometimes be confusing to readers. So for example there, if we go on to the next slide, in Chapter 4, for example, we have shortened this section from 72 to 51 pages without sacrificing any of the overall content or level of detail, which has been conducted by reorganizing and consolidating the overall number of tables and figures. Moreover, one of the ways that Appendix A was modified is that a table that was previously listed in that appendix, which discussed the relationship between projects that the MPO is funding and performance measures, now lives in Chapter 4, which is the performance chapter. Again, making sure that if you are in the performance chapter, you are seeing all relevant information about how MPO-funded projects are advancing the region's vision and goals, or those performance measures that the board has recently adopted updated targets for. Similarly, on the next slide, we're also looking at ways to sort of consolidate chapters even as a whole. So for example, the new Appendix B, which is called the Determination of Air Quality Conformity and Greenhouse Gas Monitoring, is a consolidation of the Determination of Air Quality Conformity chapter, previously Chapter 5, and the Greenhouse Gas Monitoring and Evaluation Appendix B still, into this one section so that all information can be contained there rather than being spread out throughout the document. As a result of this change, we've also renumbered some items. So the Community Transportation Access Performance Report, previously Chapter 6, is now Chapter 5. The most substantial change to the document, if we can go on to the next slide, is in Chapter 3. Specifically, Chapter 3, as a reminder, is the chapter that covers highway and transit programming. That is the section that includes all of the various project funding tables and information on project descriptions. Again, we're working to leverage the TIP dashboard here over individual project pages, specifically because the prior approach to developing the TIP document in this chapter was both highly prone to error due to the manual nature of each of the individual project pages and inflexible. This did not update whenever the MPO board, for example, made an amendment to a project cost. The individual project page or record there would not change with it due to the sort of staggered knock-on changes it would have to the broader TIP document. That being said, while those individual project pages are no longer available in the document itself, the overall project tables are still available. So the overall level of information available to readers is still present. And we're also working to foment this with future updates to the TIP project dashboard. Not only are we encouraging more feedback, but we're also working right now to incorporate additional scoring information elements into the dashboard so that besides being able to see project locations, descriptions, funding years, and breakouts, we're also going to be making sure that you can have that deeper dive into the project scoring details as well, all within this online resource. So with that, if we can go on to the next slide. I'll now actually go into the substance of what is in this document, specifically the program of projects that the board has voted to adopt. So to sort of re-summarize some elements on the next slide, please, of the regional target program, the federal fiscal year's 2731 TIP contains more than $6.4 billion in federally funded projects and programs. The MBTA's federal transit program accounts for approximately half of this at about $3.18 billion. The MWRTA federal transit program is at about $110 million, and the Cape Ann Transportation Authority's federal transit investments amount to about $5.7 million. On the highway side, the MassDOT statewide highway program is at about $750 million, and the regional target program is about $781.24 million. I will note that with this TIP, we're also accounting for a separate and related section, the earmark or discretionary program. This is part of the broader investments that MassDOT makes within the Boston region. So this is about $1.43 billion. And as I will get into on a later slide, this is predominantly reflecting investments in the bridge assets throughout the Boston region as well. So you can think of it as a sort of companion to that statewide highway program of $750 million with that $1.4 billion. If we go on to the next slide, just to provide a little more of a reminder on the target program. The regional target program funds 41 projects in this TIP for $781 million. There are 12 new projects accounted here, 7 of which are transit projects, 3 of which are bike share projects, and 2 of which are design projects that support trail connections, thereby falling under the bicycle network and pedestrian connections category. If we go on to the next slide to provide this information in a little bit of a deeper frame, this pie chart shows the balance among investment programs against the LRTP, the balance among project funding allocations against the investment programs as outlined under the MPO's long-range transportation plan. So for example, the complete streets category has about 45.7% of all overall funding, the next largest being major infrastructure at 25.9%, and then after that being transit funding at 15.5%. To compare this, though, to the LRTP targets, if we go on to the next slide for a bar chart, again, when the MPO identifies investment programs through the long-range transportation plan, there are also sort of targets set as to what those actualized investments through the TIP lay out. So, for example, the LRTP lays out a target of a 45% investment for the Complete Streets program, whereas again, with this TIP, we're looking at an amount that's ticking a little bit higher towards 50%. Major infrastructure has a 30% target and is a little bit shy of that, again, in that more like 27% range. What I will note, though, to be a little more direct with this, is that what we are seeing, for example, is that the intersection improvements program, which is about 2% of investment, is more of a 12.5% target. And the transit transformation, in comparison, at about 15.5% investment, is much higher than the 5% target. I will note, though, that when it comes to LRTP target setting, this does not necessarily realistically align with TIP investments, specifically because the LRTP targets do not make accommodations for unprogrammed balances, those sorts of reserve funding that is left unprogrammed in different years of the TIP, or administrative line items, by which I mean those line items like the funding left aside for the project design pilot to be allocated for other uses later on. This is all to say that those targets are likely something to be approached towards, but are not likely to be attained through actual TIP investments here. That being said, on the next slide, we also have another version of this chart that shows the overall trends across different TIPs, specifically looking at how the targets between, in the green, the federal fiscal years 2026 to 30 TIP investments compare to the proposed in orange federal fiscal years 2027 to 31 TIP investments. What we're basically seeing here is that generally there's a more consolidation of funding across the complete streets and major infrastructure programs, and we're seeing continued reductions in funding in the smaller investment programs of intersection improvements in the bicycle network and pedestrian connections categories. This is less because of deliberate changes to the investment program structure or investments made by the MPO under the regional target program, and more a reflection to ongoing issues that have been happening around project cost increases and readiness challenges. Specifically, if we go on to the next slide, what we're really looking at with this tip is an overall substantial reduction in the number of projects being funded despite an increase in overall funding. So the 2026 to 30 tip at the time of adoption had about $750 million available for programming for the regional target program. This tip has $781 million, but despite that $30 million increase, there's about 17 fewer projects funded through this tip than the current tip. The majority of the projects that have successfully advertised off of the tip have been in those smaller investment program categories, not just the sort of quick build community connections projects, but also the bicycle and pedestrian projects and the intersection improvements projects. Those projects that are larger in scope, those complete streets projects, are continuing to remain on the tip, and the majority of project cost increases are being concentrated there. Thus why we're seeing those increases in those investment programs. I'll also remind that this 41 project figure is after accounting for the removal of 5 projects from the tip, the bulk of the funding there being within the complete streets projects as well. So even with those projects being removed, we are still seeing consolidations of funding in that complete streets category, which represents about $356.7 million of the overall program. And I'll remind as well that this tip does not include any new municipal proponent construction projects. While there are 12 new projects, none of those are municipal proponent capital construction efforts. If we go on to the next slide, I'll also provide a brief overview of the statewide highway program. I won't get into any specific projects here, but as a reminder, the statewide highway program has about $753 million worth of investment within the Boston region alone here. That goes to 68 different projects across a broad variety of Mass DOT programs. This includes accessibility improvements, bicycle and pedestrian improvements, a bridge on system category, a freight category, the highway resiliency improvement program, intersection improvements, interstate pavement, non-interstate pavement, roadway reconstruction, safe routes to school, which is in a sense a municipal proponent category as well of investment, and also safety improvements. So again, 68 projects here for $753 million, with a large portion of this, or a large quantity of these projects, for example, 13 safe routes projects, still reflecting some of those municipally led efforts and improvements at the local level. And on the earmark discretionary side, if we can go on to the next slide again, this being that $1.4 billion of investment in the Boston region, this is the majority of this is coming from the bridge category. I'll briefly note that the bridge off system category has about 2 projects for $18.76 million, and bridge on system has 10 bridge projects for $1.35 billion there. In prior years of the tip, when this sort of analysis has been conducted, these bridge off system and on system projects are normally included in the statewide highway program, but the accounting has just been changed a little bit to categorize these projects as being more supportive under the discretionary category. So again, these projects are not necessarily new to the tip, they're just being categorized under a different program here. That being said, the earmark discretionary projects here, about 9 projects overall, reflect projects that are being predominantly funded by, for example, community project funding or earmarks. These are generally smaller amounts, which is why there's 9 projects for about $12.9 million here. There is 1 roadway reconstruction project listed under the Boston region, this being the reconstruction of McGrath Boulevard, that is listed for $53.075 million. I will note that is just the grant funding. The project on its own is fully funded within the regional target program, and this grant is additional to that beyond the project cost that is in the target program. All in all, that is 22 projects, again, for that $1.43 billion. So with that, if we can go on to the next slide. As a reminder here, should the board vote to vote out the draft federal fiscal years 2027 to 31 tip at this meeting, that is for the entirety of all federal surface transportation investment within the Boston region. That's $6.4 billion of federal funding, about a little over half of which falls under the transit programs of MBTA for 3.18, MWRTA for 110 million, CADA's federal transit program for 5.7 million, and then on the roadway and highway elements, earmark or discretionary program at 1.343 billion, statewide highway program at 753 million, and the target program at $781.24 million. With that, if we can go on the next slide, I'll go into a little more detail as to what is going to happen next should the board vote out this tip for comment. Specifically on the next slide. So the final draft of the 2027-31 tip is what is going to be presented at an upcoming MPO meeting in June. That final draft is going to include a summary of public comments that will be received during the 21-day comment period as part of Appendix C, Table C-2. We'll also have additional information in Appendix G, the operation and maintenance summary on operations and maintenance expenditures for transit authorities. We already have the summaries for the Mass DOT that have been incurred and also projected for the next few years. We're still waiting to incorporate those transit summaries as well into the document. And of course, as always, there will be potentially the need to make any changes or corrections to text throughout the document. As we have done in recent years, we'll be making sure to provide a full list of track changes in a summary table that will be provided to the MPO board for reference before and also during the vote to endorse the 2027-31 tip. On the next slide as well, we also wanted to note that besides the opportunity to engage with the MPO through the usual channels at these meetings and others, that staff are going to be tabling at events around the Boston region, both during and also shortly after the public comment period. So for example, this past weekend, staff were at the Wake Up the Earth event in the city of Boston. And also this morning, Adriana was attending the Bike to Work event at Boston City Hall as part of supporting work on a variety of different MPO efforts that are being undertaken. That being said, this weekend, staff will be at Everett's Multimodal Transportation Fair, and we're also tentatively looking at attendance at other events, including the Lexington Farmers Markets that begin on May 26th, Brookline Spring Fest on May 30th, and the Salem Arts Festival at June 6th. That being said, staff are always looking to hear more about events in your communities that might be good opportunities for us to table at, about, again, that variety of MPO work, not just when it comes to the Transportation Improvement Program here. So please do feel free to reach out to us if you have any opportunities. And I'll reiterate as well, they do not necessarily just have to be during the tip public comment period in May and June. We're always looking for opportunities throughout the summer. So with that, if we can go on to the next slide. As part of today's requested action, staff are requesting that the board votes to release the draft 2731 tip for a 21-day public comment period, which will begin tomorrow, May 8th, and conclude May 29th at 5 p.m., after which we'll be back at the June 4th board meeting with that vote to endorse. I'll happily take any questions here.
Thank you, Ethan. Questions for Ethan? Lynn Diggins.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And thanks, Ethan. Of course, I'm going to be happy to, see this go to the public for comment. You mentioned the dashboard. And I kind of brought this up in the Tipper meeting. The dashboard is very helpful. And there's a really interesting link from the dashboard to MassDOT's project site dashboard. And on that, there seems to be some at least listings of some very interesting documents. But there don't seem to be any links from those documents to more information, because I'm really looking to see what the elements of the design are and the costs associated with them in order to get a handle on the cost increases. And this is all preparation for what I think will be some very interesting conversation over the summer about what we can do to try to keep a handle on cost increases, or at least keep more insight on them. And you mentioned at that meeting that pretty much all the cost information that we see is what's available. And I asked, so I'm asking now, is there a way to get that information? Like those design documents, the costs associated with elements? And I think that'd be directed at the chair.
So Lynn, I have to admit, I'm not clear what documents you actually want.
Okay. All right, so what I'll do is I'll send you an email, with the link for the dashboard, because and like this is all preparation for the Tipper. So thank you.
All right, thanks, Lynn.
Sure.
Yeah, thanks. Caitlin?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ethan, for the presentation. I have 3 questions, quick ones. One is we will happily ask the community, the CAC, to see if there are any events or things happening that may be appropriate for you guys to table at. Is there a website where folks can submit comments, I guess, on this? And then just in general, and this is just because I'm new to the process, so forgive me for asking a naive question, but in terms of this public comment, how much will that influence any of the decisions that have already been made throughout this whole entire process? Thank you.
Yes, so I can answer the second question more directly. So we do encourage that folks submit comments via email at tip@ctps.org, though the MPO website also has a public comment form on it. We'll also be sending emails around for members of the public to be aware that the comment periods for both this document and the Unified Planning Work Program are underway. We are, as I mentioned, working on updating the TIP website itself, which will also include additional links for folks to submit a comment and again reference all the breadth of different resources that have gone into making the program of projects this year. As far as that third question on consideration of comments, that is why we include them in the TIP document at that sort of vote to endorse in Appendix C about the list of comments that are provided, though whether or not that should require changes is something that we leave up to the board at that meeting. And could you please, I'm sorry, remind me what your initial question was?
I think that was it. Oh, it was just a comment that I'd be happy to ask members of the CAC if there are opportunities in the near future for tabling for you guys, if you're interested in other events. I'm happy to reach out as well and see.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
If that would be appropriate. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, can I get a motion in a second to release the TIP for a 21-day public comment period? And please state your name for the record when making the motion in a second. Lynn Diggins.
Leonard Diggins makes a motion to release the TIP for comment.
Brian Kane.
I was hoping I would get to second a motion from the Poet Laureate of Transportation in Massachusetts, Leonard Diggins, and I happily do so, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Brian. Motion has been made and happily seconded. Please call the roll.
Certainly. David Moeller,
Yes.
Michael O'Dowd,
O'Dowd, yes.
John Romano,
John Romano, yes. And Brian, we've missed you.
sure, for sure. Sandy Johnston,
Sandy Johnston, yes.
Jim Nee,
Jim Nee, an enthusiastic yes.
Sarah Lee,
Sarah Lee, yes.
Travis Pollock,
Pollock, yes.
Brian Kane,
Kane, yes.
Caitlin Allen Connolly,
Caitlin Allen Colley, yes.
Lydia Housley,
Lydia Housley, yes.
Nayeli Rodriguez,
Nayeli Rodriguez, yes.
Jay Monty,
Jay Monty, yes.
Jen Martin,
Jen Martin, yes.
Len Diggins,
Diggins, yes.
Rob Guptill,
Rob Guptill, yes.
Tom Bett,
Tom Bent, yes, and I just wanted to thank Ethan and staff for putting this together. A lot of nice information that he submitted today on the graphs and things that they've put together.
Thank you, Tom. Megan Roach,
Megan Roach, yes. And exactly what Mr. Bent just said. Thank you.
Dennis Giambetti,
Yes.
Aaron Schaefer,
Aaron Schaefer, yes.
John Strauss,
John Strauss, yes.
Rachel Benson,
Rachel Benson, yes.
Steve Olenoff.
Steve Olenoff, yes.
This motion carries, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Ethan, and everybody who worked so hard on the tip. Great job, guys. Next item is the UPWP. Olivia?
Thank you. We can go to the next slide, please. Hello, everyone. My name is Olivia Sakosha. I'm the program manager for the Unified Planning Work Program. Today, I'll be presenting the draft Federal Fiscal Year 2027 UPWP, which we also refer to as our annual work plan. And after, I'll be asking the board to vote to release the work plan for public comment. Next slide, please. So just as an introduction, MPOs are required to produce UPWPs in order to expend the federal planning funds that we receive. And overall, the work plan establishes planning priorities for the upcoming year and shows how these agency activities help us to achieve the long-range vision and goals that we've set for the region. So in the 2027 work plan, you'll find descriptions of the planning work that staff will undertake next year, the deliverables we anticipate to produce, who will perform the work, the timeframes for completing the work, and the budget associated with those activities. Next slide, please. So this is a visual for how we typically develop the UPWP each year, and this represents a federal fiscal year, so this timeline starts in October. As you can see, we are kind of just over the halfway mark on the timeline here. And what I wanted to specifically highlight is the time between October and May, where the UPWP committee meets to help guide the development of the next work plan. And the committee met 5 times since October. And on the next slide, I can go over briefly what we discussed at those meetings. Next slide, please. So we dedicated a few meetings to talk about our program work. Staff came to those meetings and gave presentations about specific projects that we will be working on in the future, and requested committee member input about those specific projects. And those included our freight action plan, the regional bicycle and pedestrian gaps analysis, regional vulnerability assessment, and a number of metropolitan area planning council studies that are funded through the UPWP. And the committee also met a few times to discuss discrete studies. MPO staff brought 5 discrete study proposals to the committee for their consideration, and then the committee voted to recommend 3 of those studies to include in our 2027 work plan. Overall, the UPWP is essential for us as staff to be able to conduct our planning work, so I just wanted to take a quick moment to thank the UPWP committee for the time that they've put in over the past few months to help develop this draft plan today. If we go on to the next slide, please, I can explain some of the highlights from the 2027 work plan. The overall funding in this work plan is $7.85 million, and that is split between the Boston Region MPO, which receives $6.4 million, and MAPC, which receives $1.4 million. And this funding comes from Federal Highway Administration PL or planning funds, plus a required local match that comes from MassDOT, and Federal Transit Administration Section 5303 funds, plus a required local match that comes from MassDOT as well. And just for reference, in the 2026 UPWP, we had $7.7 million in federal funding. So we will be relatively level funded again for 2027, and this is a trend that we've been seeing for the past few years. And on the next slide, I've shown how this $7.85 million is broken down into the different work areas that we include in our UPWP, which are support to the MPO and our 3C planning work, our 2 technical assistance programs, our new discrete studies, MassDOT directed 5303 funds, direct support, MAPC planning studies and technical analyses, and resource management and support activities for both MAPC and the MPO. And I just wanted to highlight a few of these sections briefly. If we go to the next slide, please. I'll first call out MPO support and 3C planning. As you can see, this represents the majority of our budget for the next year. This represents $5.2 million of our full budget. And this section includes all of the MPO's ongoing program work. And we categorize our programs into 2 different categories, the first being core MPO functions, and that includes activities like producing our 3 certification documents and also doing performance-based planning, public engagement, community transportation access, and congestion management work. And if we go to the next slide, this same section also includes our ongoing program work that supports the 3C planning process. And that includes our transportation impact mitigation, freight, regional model enhancement, data, active transportation, and multimodal mobility and infrastructure programs. And this section also includes more general support for MPO-related meetings and support for the products that we produce as an agency. So this being the largest category, I of course wanted to call it out specifically since it represents where a significant amount of our MPO resources is put. If we go to the next slide, I also wanted to highlight the discrete studies section here. As you can see, we reserve a small portion of our annual budget for discrete studies. This has consistently been around $150,000 over the past few years. However, discrete studies are quite important because they allow the MPO to study timely transportation topics that aren't already embedded in one of our other ongoing initiatives. Discrete studies are also designed to be completed in one federal fiscal year. The UPWP committee voted to recommend 3 studies to include in our 2027 work plan, and those are roadway pricing technical evaluation, iterative scenario analysis for $75,000, impact of parking supply on property values for $40,000, and opportunities for the Boston Region MPO to support transit-oriented development for $35,000. If you'd like to read more details about any of the work that we plan to do next year, including the ongoing program work that I just mentioned or these discrete studies, the executive summary of the UPWP provides an overview, and of course, we go into greater detail in the main body of the document as well, and those are all linked on the calendar today. If we go to the next slide, please. Just to wrap up my presentation, I wanted to discuss what happens next. So today, after any questions or discussion, I'll be requesting that the MPO board vote to release the UPWP for public comment. The 21-day public comment period will begin tomorrow, May 8th, and end at 5 p.m. on May 29th. This is the same timeframe as the TIPS public comment period. Public comments can be submitted via email, and I'll also be holding virtual public office hours 2 or 3 times a week to answer any questions that folks may have about the document or to share comments that way. And after the public comment period closes, the UPWP committee will meet again to review those comments and to vote to recommend the MPO board approves the final UPWP. And lastly, at the June 18th board meeting, staff will request endorsement of the final UPWP from the full board. And with that, I'm happy to turn it back to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivia. Questions for Olivia? Brian Kane.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. David, appreciate it. I think this is more for you, Mr. Chairman. My question is, I guess, is about the FHWA 3C planning funding and sort of how it flows. So from reading the document, I understand it flows to OTP, which then distributes it to MPOs, which is great. I understand that's based on something, a formula developed by the Massachusetts Association of Regional Planning Agencies. What is that formula? What is it based on? How is it developed, et cetera?
Yeah, so that formula is developed by the regional planning agencies. I don't have it in front of me, so I can't actually give you a full detail, but we can get it for you. But I believe there's a takedown for every RPA. Like everybody gets 40,000 or 50,000 or 100,000, whatever the number is. And then there are factors related to population and I think maybe urbanized area. Tegan has her hand up though, so she might actually know exactly what the answer is. Tegan?
You're pretty much there. So it's a 40%
Tegan, we've got a hard time hearing you. At least I have a hard time hearing you. Can you do something?
Yeah, 1 second.
Thanks.
Well, can I ask my second question while we're waiting on Tegan?
Sure.
I then see later on in the same paragraph, which is on what page am I on here? 55. Or Tegan, are you ready?
If you can hear me, I am.
We can hear you.
Thank you. Yeah, so sorry. So David was pretty much there. It is 40% is distributed as a baseline for all of the MPOs. And then there's a 30% allocated per population and then 30% allocated per urban population. So not quite urbanized area, but the urbanized area population.
Okay. Thank you.
And that's for the planning funds, which
Yeah,
is different
Brian-
for the capital funds.
And Brian, that covers 10 of the 13 MPOs. There are 3 rural planning agencies that don't get FHWA 3C funding and are funded with statewide planning funds so that they are given some level of guaranteed funding every year.
Well, it's very generous of you, David. Thank you.
I like rural communities, Brian.
And so I guess in that same paragraph, I see that of the Boston region's allocation, which I assume is, well, okay, 4.8 million. The MPO gets 3.9 and MAPC gets 921,000. Does that money flow from OTP directly to MAPC, or does it sort of flow through the MPO?
It flows directly to MAPC. So
Okay.
So the money comes to the state and OTP administers it. We give annual contracts to all of the MPOs. And in the Boston region, we give an annual contract to both CTPS and MAPC. And in fact, MAPC, because they're a fiduciary agent, actually signs the contract for both CTPS and MAPC, but they are separate contracts.
Okay. Okay. I have several other questions now, but
Okay, go ahead. I'm happy to answer any question you have, Brian. I enjoy it. I enjoy our dialogues.
You're good at this, and you have it all in your head, which is incredible. Okay, so how is the 921K for MAPC developed relative to the total?
So I think what you're asking me is the funding split, right? I think
I
that's
guess so. Yeah,
right?
of the 4.8, how do we decide who gets what?
Yeah. So that funding split, as far as I know, has existed since the founding of the Boston MPO/CTPS. Okay. For those, I'll give a little quick history lesson. For those of you who don't know, the original MPO consisted of
one of those.
It consisted of EOTC, which is now MassDOT, the Highway Division, the MBTA, Massport, MAPC, and the Advisory Board. So there were only 6 members on the MPO originally. There were no local elected officials. At that time, a decision was made, I believe, to give a certain set aside to MAPC in recognition of them serving the local process, and also because, they were one of the members who, felt like they needed some revenue. But for my purposes, I don't know how it was developed, why it was set at that level. I don't think anybody has any documentation on it, right? But I know it's existed since I started here 32 years ago, or I started at CTPS 32 years ago.
Well, David, if you don't know, there's no hope for the rest of them. All right. So I guess putting on my A&F chair's hat, I guess we should probably look at that. So you said there is a contract, so that makes me happy. So it's all spelled out somewhere who gets what. I guess we just don't know sort of why. Is it basically they get 19% of the total or something?
If you've done the math and come up with 19%, that's probably correct.
18.9999. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So they get 19%. Yeah. And
I mean,
CTPS
okay.
31%.
And I'm, I know Eric's not here, and I'm not trying to put MAPC on the spot. I'm just trying to figure out kind of how the money flows. Is 19% something we're comfortable with? I guess that's not an MPO decision, technically. That's your office, so I don't want to put you on the spot either, but I mean,
right.
Is 19% adequate for them? Is it adequate for us? Is it adequate for you? I guess we should have a broader discussion about this, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I'm happy to have a discussion, but I think to answer the question, it's adequate for me in the sense of,
sure,
nobody has raised to me that it's not an appropriate split, right? If the MPO wants to have a discussion about is it appropriate to give MAPC 19% of the money, that's a discussion obviously we'd like to have with Eric and possibly Lizzie in the room.
Of course.
But it's a discussion the MPO can have.
Well, I guess I'd like to have it either at the full board or at, I'm happy to have it at the ANF committee, whatever works for everybody. There's also, I noticed in the next line, MAPC is also getting $500,000 in 5303 funds, which, as I asked earlier, is planning money that flows to the OTP.
Yes.
So that's another direct allocation from your office to MAPC, it sounds like.
Yes, and what we do, Brian, and this is a relatively recent thing, is we combine 5303 and PL into a unified planning grant. So there's only one contract with MAPC, and there's one contract with CTPS, although there are times where we give CTPS a separate contract, which is SPR funded OTP money that much like I give money to the rurals, we sometimes give CTPS an additional contact of SPR money so that they have additional money beyond the 5303 3C planning money to do work that MassDOT would like CTPS to do. And then, of course, CTPS has individual contracts with the MBTA to do work.
So I guess I'm just trying to figure out what sort of, for lack of a better term, jurisdiction the MPO has here. It sounds like those are decisions directly between MassDOT and MAPC. And I'm not trying to say MAPC is doing anything wrong or doesn't do a great job. I'm literally just trying to get my head around how this all works. Then you said there's a contract between MAPC and CTPS, and it's...
No, MAPC is as the fiduciary agent for CTPS. MAPC, my contracts are actually with MAPC.
Okay.
One is specifically for work done by CTPS, but the CTPS, the Boston MPO, is not a legal entity and authorized to enter into contracts.
Right.
And so I have no contract that Tegan signs. I have two contracts that Lizzie and I sign, one for MAPC and one for CTPS. And if I give CTPS additional money that I control that is statewide planning, Lizzie also signs that contract for them.
Is it appropriate for this board to ever see those?
Sure, anybody who wants to see them can see them. Once they're signed and complete and done, they're public records, so anybody can see them if they want to see them. Sure.
You know what I mean, David.
Yeah, Brian. I don't know what. I don't like if the board would like to take on this issue, I would not tell the board it wasn't their job. Of course, it's their job. It's the planning funds. But I as chair, I'm not recommending anybody take on this issue. I'm not telling anybody they can't. If the board wants to take on this issue and have a discussion about should we stop funding MAPC or should we fund MAPC at a different level, that's certainly a question the board can have.
I guess I'm just, to the extent that it is MPO dollars, I would like to better understand how it flows. I would also love to have a better understanding of a formula that existed at least more than 32 years ago that no one's really sure of. And also just sort of, I guess I'm just not comfortable with doing things the way we've always done them because that's how we've always done them. And I just would like to better understand this. And I don't want to make a federal case out of this. I'm not saying anyone's doing anything wrong or that MAPC doesn't do great work. They do. It's just that where there are public dollars involved, I guess I'd like to have a better understanding. So I guess my request to you is, to the extent that Boston Region MPO dollars are flowing to MAPC or another entity, can you please share those contracts with me if it's appropriate?
Yeah, sure. Happy to share those contracts with you, Brian.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That concludes my questions.
Okay. Other comments on the UPWP or what Brian and I have been dialoguing on? Seeing none, can I get a motion in a second to release the UPWP for, is it a 21-day public comment period, Olivia? For a 21-day public comment period, and please state your name for the record when making the motion. Ben.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make the motion to release the draft for public comment, and I'd like to, being a member of the UPWP, thank again staff and all the members for putting this together this year.
Thank you. Brian Kane.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Please call the roll.
Certainly. David Moeller,
Yes.
Michael O'Dowd,
O'Dowd, yes.
John Romano,
John Romano, yes.
Sandy Johnston,
Sandy Johnston, yes.
Jim Nee,
Jim Nee, yes.
Sarah Lee,
Sarah Lee, yes.
Travis Pollock,
Travis Pollock, yes.
Brian Kane,
Kane, yes.
Caitlin Allen Connolly,
Caitlin Allen Conley, yes.
Lydia Housley,
Lydia Housley, yes.
Nayeli Rodriguez,
Nayeli Rodriguez, yes.
Jay Monty,
Jay Monty, yes.
Jen Martin,
Jen Martin, yes.
Len Diggins,
Diggins, yes.
Rob Guptill,
Rob Guptill, yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Bent, yes.
Megan Roach,
Megan Roach, yes.
Dennis Giambetti, Aaron Schaefer,
Aaron Schaefer, yes.
acknowledging both votes as Dennis and Aaron Schaefer. Thank you both. John Strauss, pardon me, just calling on John Strauss,
John Strauss, yes.
thank you. Rachel Benson,
Rachel Benson, yes.
Steve Olenoff.
Steve Olenoff, yes.
This motion carries, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is critical urban freight corridor update. Shrivanti Gopalan. Oh, I'm sorry, Narayan. I'm sorry, Shrivanti. I
You
apologize.
got it right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Shrivanti Gopalan Narayanan, and I'm the Freight Planning Program Manager and MPO staff. Next slide, please. To recap, the National Highway Freight Network includes the interstate system and critical freight corridors designated by states and MPOs. Roadways identified as critical freight corridors as part of the National Highway Freight Network are eligible for funding under the National Highway Freight Program. The Boston Region MPO can identify up to 48.86 miles of critical urban freight corridors and 2.56 miles of critical rural freight corridors. And please note that the MPO does not have any existing or proposed critical rural freight corridors. Next slide, please. And to recap, during the March 19th MPO board meeting, the proposed critical urban freight corridor designations were presented and the MPO board voted to release them for a 21-day public comment period, which started on March 20, 2026 and ended on April 10, 2026. Today, I'm here to present a summary of the public comments that we received. For a few designations, for a few proposed designations in the city of Malden, we received a letter from City of Medford that resulted in modifications to the proposed designations in Malden. And for a few proposed designations in South Boston, we received a letter from the Fort Point Neighborhood Association and a letter from elected officials that resulted in modifications to the proposed designations in South Boston. All three letters that were received were shared with the board and can also be found on the MPO calendar. Next slide, please. So the modifications were made based on coordinations between relevant agencies and stakeholders. And as a result of that, the adjustments in City of Malden based on discussions between the City of Medford and City of Malden include removal of Pleasant Street between Highland Avenue and Medford border, removal of Highland Avenue segment between Dever Street and Medford border, addition of Medford Street segment between Highland Avenue and Commercial Street. Next slide, please. In South Boston, based on the coordinations among Massport, the City of Boston, and the Fort Point Neighborhood Association, modifications to proposed designations include removal of Congress Street between the Rams and D Street, removal of D Street between Congress Street and Summer Street, extension of Fit Kennedy Avenue to Dolphin Way, and finally, addition of Summer Street between East First Street and Thomas Butler Freight Corridor, an existing corridor, which was initially proposed for exclusion, but has now been added back in. Next slide, please. So after incorporating all of these modifications, the revised MPO mileage is 48.813 miles, remaining within the target mileage of 48.86 miles. And I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge and thank my colleagues, Deborah Camo from the from the data management team for her contributions for mapping and mileage accuracy, and Ken Dumas from graphics team for his contributions to the graphics for this effort. I would also like to thank our regional partners for their continued collaboration and support throughout this effort. MPO staff would request that the MPO board vote to endorse the recommended critical urban freight corridor designation. Thank you, and I'll pass it back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Shravanti. Questions for Shravanti? Steve Olenoff.
Yeah, I was wondering about these letters that we received where they objected to various streets. Can anyone comment on why they'd be doing that? I mean, aren't the trucks just going to go where they go anyway?
Yeah, that's a great question, Stephen. So basically, the letters that we received, as I mentioned earlier, were from two areas, one in Malden and another one in South Boston. For the one in Malden, basically there were some conversations about current truck movement in both the cases, and based on internal coordinations between both the cities in terms of the Malden designations and between the agencies and stakeholders involved in South Boston, they analyzed what would be the best in terms of freight movement in this area, and through that, these adjustments were recommended. So we want to make sure that the designations definitely reflect what the freight needs are. So there had to be a few coordinations that had to be made to make sure that the concerns that were raised in the letters are still addressed, but at the same time, freight movement is also, justified, and designations support that. So I hope that helps in understanding how this process was done.
Lydia?
Yeah, thanks so much. I would just echo that, and I want to say, the city of Boston is happy to support this amended proposal and really appreciates the coordination that's happened over the last few weeks to do some of that. The proposal really, as you mentioned, reflects the collaboration among several parties: City of Boston, Massport, FPNA, and it sounds like our neighbors to the north as well. The segments in the plan that have been mentioned are currently used as critical truck access points and would benefit from the federal funding opportunities that this provides to improve traffic safety and environmental improvement outcomes related to freight. And, just to kind of respond to the question that was just posed, removing the originally proposed segments on Congress and D Street and extending the segment on Fit Kennedy supports the kind of our broader goals and reflects the commentary that we received from some of our constituents, while maximizing the kind of funding opportunity for freight improvement and mitigation. So I just want to say thank you to Massport and to the staff for helping out with this.
Any other comments? Seeing none, can I get a motion and a second to approve the critical freight corridors, urban freight corridors as presented today? Please state your name for the record when making the motion. Sarah Lee.
Hi, I just wanted to echo the thanks to all of our partners, the City of Boston and CTPS and MassDOT on this effort, and I will vote to approve this requested action. Thank you.
That's a motion. I got you.
Make the
Yeah, I got
nomination.
it.
You know what I mean. You know what I mean.
I do indeed, and I'm sorry, I should have called on you earlier so you could make your comment first. So motion has been made. Lynn Diggins.
Leonard Diggins seconds the motion.
Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded. Please call the roll. Dave?
Pardon me. I will call the roll. David Mueller.
Yes, and Shrivanti, great work with working with, it's what public comment time is for. So great job.
Thank you, and thanks everyone.
Michael O'Dowd.
Michael O'Dowd, yes.
John Romano.
John Romano, yes.
Sandy Johnston.
Sandy Johnston, yes.
Jim Nee.
Jim Nee, yes.
Sarah Lee.
Sarah Lee, yes.
Travis Pollock.
Travis Pollock, yes.
Brian Kane.
Kane, yes.
Caitlin Allen Connolly.
Caitlin Allen Conley, yes.
Lydia Housley.
Housley, yes.
Nayeli Rodriguez.
Nayeli Rodriguez, yes.
Jay Monty.
Jay Monty, yes.
Jen Martin.
Jen Martin, yes.
Len Diggins.
Yes.
Rob Guptill.
Rob Guptill, yes.
Tom Bent.
Tom Bent, yes.
Megan Roach.
Megan Roach, yes.
Dennis Giambetti. Aaron Schaefer.
Aaron Schaefer, yes.
John Strauss.
John Strauss, yes.
Rachel Benson.
Rachel Benson, yes.
Steve Olenoff.
Steve Olenoff, yes.
For this vote, would any other member of the board wish to be acknowledged? Otherwise, with that, motion carries, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is an engagement update by Erin McGuire and Dwee Wang.
Thank you, Mr.
Go
Chair.
ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gia Hong, and I'm a Public Engagement Coordinator at the Boston Region MPO. My colleague Erin McGuire and I are looking forward to sharing an engagement update with you. In today's presentation, I will summarize engagement activities over the last 6 months and review themes that have emerged from public comments. We will also share some discussion questions for you all to consider as we progress through the long-range planning process, address regional transportation needs, and continue building our engagement practice. Next slide, please. These engagement updates are intended to connect public input to planning outcomes more effectively and intentionally, particularly in the development of our next long-range plan and also across our other planning and program areas. We want to ensure that you, as decision makers, have a clear picture of what MPO staff are hearing from people in the region regarding their transportation concerns, needs, and priorities. And we hope this qualitative analysis can complement and support the quantitative data you're already using to assess needs and to inform our various planning and policy decisions. These updates focus on public engagement data collected through public input and comments from community events, meetings with advocates, MPO meetings, and email comments and submissions. They are analyzed for geographic distribution, emerging themes, municipal priorities, and trends and changes over time. And the goal for these updates is to support the development of the long-range transportation plan, to connect public input to planning outcomes, and to help inform MPO decision-making and accountability. Next slide, please. On this slide, we have a screenshot from our public engagement dashboard. We're continuing to use this online interactive engagement dashboard to analyze and visualize public input data. A link to the dashboard is on today's meeting calendar and will be shared in the chat. The dashboard shows a map of the Boston MPO region with the input we have collected from engagement efforts so far in the federal fiscal year 2026. This includes input collected from events, meetings, email, and our LRTP engagement platform, Social Pinpoint. The comments on the map are shown as pie charts, which illustrate the distribution of comment themes. The size of each pie chart illustrates the volume of comments received. These themes are organized according to the goals in our long-range plan. There are other tools such as filters for goal area or subregion and a searchable table for exploring public input received. In the tabs next to the map, you can also find a breakdown of all comments in federal fiscal year 2026 so far by goal area and by quarter. MPO staff regularly update the data in this dashboard. Data for past years going back to federal fiscal year 2024 can be explored by navigating the tabs at the bottom of the map. We encourage you to explore the dashboard if you haven't already. Next slide, please. Today, we are sharing an engagement update about public input received from October 2025 to March 2026. As I mentioned previously, we evaluate input collected from events, meetings, email, and our LRTP engagement platform. One thing I wanted to note about this time period is that we received over 100 comments about the Swampscott Rail Trail, which makes up a notable portion of the input we're summarizing in this update. We will dig more into this in the next slide. And at this point, I will pass it to Erin to share what we heard from the public during this time period. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Gia. Hello, everyone. My name is Erin McGuire. Happy to be here today. I am the transportation planner in charge of developing our long-range transportation plan. On this slide, we are going to be taking a closer look at what the maps are showing for the geographic distribution of comments, as well as this pie chart that shows the distribution of various comment topics. As we had mentioned, we got over 100 comments about the Swampscott Rail Trail, which can be visualized in the concentration of comments that are in the North Shore subregion of this map. The geographic distribution is related to where the comments come from and not particularly about where the comments are talking about. So just a quick item to note there. With that being said, many of the comments about the Swampscott Rail Trail were coming from Swampscott residents. As such, there is a high concentration in that very specific area. We also see some geographic gaps in our engagement, particularly in the South Shore subregions. This is largely because our in-person engagement has slowed over the last 6 months due to the winter seasons and staffing changes. However, we plan to address these gaps in the coming months through a targeted engagement approach that Gia will talk about a little bit later. Moving into the pie chart showing the distribution of comment topics, we see that almost 50% of the total comments we received were related to the goal area of access and connectivity, with safety and other as the other top 3 topics for this period. Before digging deeper into access and connectivity and safety, to provide some additional clarity on what is contained in this other, these comments included discussions on project funding and delivery, agency coordination, and the types of resources that the MPO could provide to our municipal partners. Taking a closer look at the access and connectivity comments, we found that it accounted for almost half of the total comments we had received. In addition to the comments that we had received about the Swampscott Rail Trail, we also heard from the MPO's Transit Working Group and municipalities at our region-wide transportation planning fall meeting about this topic. At the Transit Working Group, we engaged members on the Coordinated Public Transit Human Services Transportation Plan, which supports efforts to meet transportation needs of older adults and people with disabilities. Here, participants highlighted the need for improved transportation options to access destinations and coordination, particularly across municipal and service boundaries. At our region-wide transportation planning fall meeting, we engaged with municipalities on their transportation priorities and project delivery processes. Municipal representatives here highlighted improving connections to public transit and closing gaps in service as some key priorities. Following access and connectivity, about 1/5 of the comments we received included a desire to improve transportation and roadway safety. We heard safety comments from municipalities during the region-wide fall meeting, stakeholders regarding the Swampscott Rail Trail, and members at our public tabling events, along with our LRTP engagement platform. Members of the public highlighted safety concerns, including dangerous pedestrian crossings and intersections, as well as a need for safety infrastructure for people walking, biking, and rolling. As we continue to hear from stakeholders and members of the public about their priorities, we will continue to report back to our various program managers as the engagement relates to their ongoing work. This helps to ensure that the public engagement we receive can help support the various different elements of work that we do at the MPO. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Erin. As we head into warmer months, MPO staff are excited to be doing more in-person engagement that prioritizes closing gaps and who are reaching. On this slide, I've shared a few upcoming engagement efforts, which include in-person community events. Ethan shared some events that we're attending this May, but we're prioritizing communities also outside of the inner core and building more community partnerships. If there are any events happening in your community, we would love to table if you're interested in the MPO attending. We're continuing to build out our municipal engagement strategy and plan to host a region-wide meeting this June. This is a continuation of our efforts from the fall meeting that Erin was talking about. Please look out for more information from MPO staff in the coming weeks. We are also planning a second community planning lab. This is the MPO's civic education program, which was piloted in September 2024. We're excited to continue this program and to engage stakeholders through knowledge sharing and capacity building. We continue to host monthly community advisory council meetings. These monthly meetings are a space for knowledge building and discussions on regional transportation issues. And lastly, I wanted to share that we're continuing to build internal processes for capturing a more comprehensive view of engagement data across the agency. Next slide, please. As we mentioned earlier, one goal of bringing this information to you all is to provide a recurring space to hear about, reflect upon, and to discuss what we are hearing from engagement activities. With that said, we would appreciate any questions or comments you may have. We also prepared a few discussion questions for you to consider. These include what additional data and analyses would be helpful for you as decision makers, and are there any topics, themes, or geographic areas you would like to investigate for us to investigate in future updates? Thank you so much. And now I'll pass it back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Gia. Thank you, Erin. And Gia, I'd like to apologize first for butchering your name. I won't do it again. Comments, questions, MPO members? So I don't have any questions. I would like to make a comment. I think this is great work. It continues to improve. Like every presentation, it's really, I don't know how to say it other than it's really good work. You guys are doing a great job. And other than saying yes, more, I don't know like that I have any comments. So I'll call on Caitlin.
Great, thank you. I just second that and just want to say just thank you so much to the team. They're doing really great work and their interactions with the Community Advisory Council are excellent, and just, bravo. And thank you so much for the hard work you're doing. It's incredibly important to the transparency of all of these processes. So thank you so much.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you both very much. Next item on the agenda is, I believe, member items. Are there any? Sandy Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the theme of public engagement, at MBTA, we are continuing public engagement for Focus 2050, our long-range plan and the program for mass transportation. We have a public meeting tonight, open house out from 5:30 to 6:30 in person at Action for Boston Community Development on Tremont Street, right around the corner from the State Transportation Building. I'm going to put a link in the chat to the project website page, and folks can find details there. Also, next week, next Thursday, we are planning an in-person engagement session for public sector stakeholders. So if you are a member of a municipality, an RTA, MPO staff, we'd love to see you in person. You can email me for details. We're also planning a virtual one for later on in May, and would love to see as many folks as can make it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Jimmy.
Thank you, Chair. The MWRTA is currently in its third round of public comment for our network redesign. I will also put a link in the chat for our public comment interactive webpage. Just wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of that. We're accepting comments on this third round through the end of May.
Excellent. Thank you, Jim. Any others? Seeing none. Oh, Brian, you have something? Or
I was going to move to
make a
adjourn.
motion? All right. Can I get a motion and a second to adjourn? Please state your name for the record when making the motion. Brian Kane.
Kane moves to adjourn.
Lynn Diggins.
Leonard Diggins. I'm not a poet. I'm not a poet laureate, but I want to put Laurie Selection Committee in Arlington, and you have not lived until you've been on one of those committees.
So a motion has been made and seconded, but I see Dave Hung. Do you have something you need to add? I saw your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just on the posted materials, there is the draft tip in both PDF and HTML format. Thank you all for reviewing. HTML is the more correct at the moment. There, I think, needs to be a revision made on the some of the formatting on the PDF file. So staff will have that up by tomorrow. I just wanted to note that there will be a small correction on formatting. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Pitt, you've got your hand up, and I've got a motion on the table, but you got something, Tom?
Yeah, no, I wanted to clarify something. Sorry, I got it into late. I thought I heard that the vote to approve the UPWP was going to be on 6/11. Should that be 6/18?
I can jump in there. Yes, it is.
Thanks, Olivia.
June 18th. I apologize if I misspoke.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to make sure. Thanks.
Yes.
Thank you. With that being cleared up, we have a motion and a second to adjourn. Are there any objections to that motion? Seeing none, without objection, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much. See you